plan and strategize, because healthcare has always been the way that we have been oppressed as
Yes.
people of color. We have always been placed at the back end side of understanding and literacy. And we know that right now there are a lot of political ties in healthcare, which is a human right.
Yep.
And it's concerning that we now have leaders that are running on platforms that don't really explain what they're going to do for our healthcare if they are elected. And that's concerning.
Because they've been using our healthcare model to literally police our communities, and they haven't learned how to actually serve our communities outside of the policing element. So they can't
Exactly.
tell you what the plan is because they don't have a plan.
Exactly.
Our full plan is really to defund police and to defund the whole community policing model, so that we invest in our healthcare, so that we invest in the social health of people that are out
Right.
here in our community struggling every day,
Exactly.
because that investment does not exist. We need to firm up our infrastructure so that the inclusion and the accessibility is there, so that customer service is not something that we just talk about, but that it actually serves us, you
Exactly.
know?
Let's talk about like academies of learning, even, because we have a lot of youth that are petrified of being in a situation where they cannot fathom being pulled over by a police officer. They cannot fathom not coming home to a meal on the table. They cannot fathom what it feels like to not know how to finish their homework because they don't have the right support, or because mom has to work a graveyard shift and so they have to take care of everything at home. We have a lot of situations happening with youth right now who are having to virtually learn on their own without any parental or direct support. And then if we throw in the mental health piece, we have youth that are being cycled through these programs that are not healing them, but they're actually adding on to their traumas. And so when we're looking at what that really should look like from a reallocation of funds perspective, um, what about the criminals that they're being labeled criminals, but they're not really
Well,
criminals?
they label them as criminals when they say they're at risk. If you call it a black child at risk or marginalized or disenfranchised, you're literally labeling them as a criminal. If you say they live in poverty and that's part of the at risk factor, the next factor is going to be criminal. And so the fact that that's where we take it, instead of again investing in planning in those families and support,
Right.
that to me is criminal.
Right.
You would literally alienate someone because they live below the poverty line, because it makes you more comfortable to not have to serve them.
Right.
Again, that is the reason that we're looking for literal change in how we seek out people that serve us in political infrastructures. People have to have those life experiences to exchange the necessity for human rights and dignity when we provide these services.
Right, right. And then when we're thinking about what it looks like to have youth that are educated on a level where they understand what their human rights are, now we're in a space where we have to make sure the youth understand what their rights are. We're in a space where we can't keep letting different elections go on and the youth don't know what they have access to. And we also cannot allow adults that do not know what it feels like to grow up in impoverished communities to tell impoverished children how they should grow up in their communities.
Exactly. I mean, you're the same person that says don't play with those kids, so you definitely can't.
Right.
But yeah, I get your point, because when my nephew got killed 10 years ago, my biggest question was like, he's connected to all of these programs. How are the children dying? And the response from the city, the response from our education leaders, the response from our health department was like, well, they're all dying. Look. And they were quantifying the deaths. And at that point, I realized, I said, you know what? They're not even going to investigate my nephew's murder. He's going to turn into a cold case, because that's how they're going to get more funding. From right now, because of the trauma, everyone's going to receive funding. And over the next couple of years, he's not going to be investigated. They're not going to look for who killed him or any of the other kids that have been murdered. But when it becomes a cold case, they're going to bring in overtime. They're going to pay the overtime for those retired officers that probably already know why the kid got murdered, because they got so many kids that are informants. And then they're going to go ahead and investigate the crime.
Yep. Lots of
And
tax
look what
dollars
happened.
later.
10 years later, he's a cold case filed. The whole reason I became a community organizer was because I knew that the health and the mental health and the safety and emotional safety and physical safety of our community was on the chopping block
Right.
for everyone's interest and not ours.
Exactly. And that can be traumatic for
It's
any parent who has a
terrorizing.
son.
It's terrorizing because you know what's going to happen to your child. There's nothing to stop it.
Exactly. So there is no question as to why there was a vote for Mingus. Mingus has two black sons. And if you just listen to everything that was just said, that's an ongoing trauma to deal with, knowing that you have to protect their lives on a higher degree every day than any other opportunity that you have in life. I mean, that's your prized possession. My brother just turned 21 this past weekend, and we celebrated it like it was his first birthday. Like it was like phenomenal because he's a black man and he has made it to 21. And to us, that is phenomenal. Yeah. And it shouldn't be like this though. We shouldn't have to, keep making these situations feel like we cannot live to see another day without someone holding a hand over us.
You know what was normal in our community in the 80s? If somebody didn't come home on time, you say, oh, they're dead or in jail. That was it. That was
everyone who didn't hear what
you're not just kicking it somewhere and you forgot to call home, you're dead or in jail. That is the trauma that we live with in our community every single day. And the fact that people will not connect that trauma to their leadership so that they can confirm to us that they're going to do something about it, that it is, just let us know that you see the terror in it.
Exactly. And to everyone who's watching us, apologies if you could not see me in the shot we have on. If you cannot see our clear face mask, we are practicing social distancing in the shot right now. So we wanted to make sure that you could see Teresa. So if you cannot see me, I know you can hear me. I have a very loud projection, but I wanted to make sure that everyone understood why you hear a voice, but you don't see the face. I don't even want to be seen. I want you to see Teresa. So just so you know, I'm Aria Mormon. I'm Ms. Black Oregon International Ambassador 2020. And it is my pleasure to be having a conversation with our mayoral candidate, Teressa Raiford. And so to all watching, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments because we know that it is important to have your voice heard. This is a conversation that you've just heard just briefly. We haven't even gotten into anything that you didn't already know about Teresa. But if this is new information to you, hello, where have you been? We talked about the primary election. We talked about the current state. Civic participation, healthcare, as it relates and this is 3:56. We're supposed to be done in 4 minutes.
Wait. Hey, what happened? We all right?
We got immigration.
It looks like it has like a poor connection. Well, never mind. That's just a mute button. There it
Can
is.
you see us both?
Um,
Can you see us both?
on Instagram, it's a vertical shot, so we're only seeing Teresa. But on YouTube and Zoom and everywhere else, we're with both of y'all. But just on Instagram, can we only see one of y'all? But everywhere else, all the other platforms are good.
Okay. I see what you're saying. It doesn't not. Token. We see you, Token.
Yeah.
And the business the way you are. Sorry you guys can't see me. I've tried to, I'll request myself to be in it just so that they
I
can
have to
see
dye
me.
my hair. I
Okay,
look like
Token?
Frederick Douglass.
I requested on Instagram.
Let me see if I can get connected. Just a second.
Okay.
There's so much technology that I have to like navigate. I'm like, what is this? Um, and I don't think I'm going to be able
Yeah.
to actually because it's through a software system and it's not through the phone. So I don't know if you can actually connect via Instagram to me directly. Does that make sense? I think there's a poor connection as
So
well. Yeah, I don't know. It keeps kicking like a black screen and then it kicks y'all out. Can y'all hear me clearly?
yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, let's yeah, I don't think that there's actually a way to fix it right now because like the way that it's filmed, it's gone through all through a software system that like is automatically fed. So I don't know if I can actually like receive that request that you sent. Like I don't know where it's at. Like it goes through the software system, right?
No worries. So I have logged into Instagram, and to anyone watching on YouTube and watching on Facebook, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them. We will gladly answer them in the next 5 minutes or so. But we had a national devastation. We had our babies being locked in cages and separated from their parents, and some of them have not been united with their parents. And also, we just have a lot going on as it relates to the need for equity in immigration.
Hmm.
And we know that that's a part of your platform, so we made
And we're still allowing them to operate in our cities. So, yeah, just like cash bail, we have to get rid of it. It needs to be abolished. It is inequitable. It is overrepresenting people, mostly people of color. And when we talk about the immigrant communities and we talk about where they come from, it is overrepresenting people that come from countries that they consider poor countries or not economically sound countries.
right.
They're not chasing down people from Sweden right now. You know, they're chasing down people from Mexico and Africa. You know, and this is it's shameful because it is directed. We heard the president of the United States calling some of the countries in this world shithole countries. And saying that there was not going to be any tolerance for them coming into our countries. And then that followed with these immigration laws and the instance of wanting to build a wall. We know where this operation comes from. We know that we have a blueprint of white supremacy in this country. We know we uphold policies that displace families and that take children away from them.
Right.
Our current foster care system has been mandated on the way that we created genocide in this country when they stole this land.
Right.
So it is literally progressing in the way that we would not want it to. And the fact that people are allowing it without speaking up and without doing the necessary legislative actions to stop it, or even being an influence like a mayor would be to our judicial systems, to our state leaders, we literally have to do what is necessary, what they call radical, what is right.
Exactly. And that's why I love what you're saying, because a lot of the approaches to responses when a mayoral candidate has been asked, what do you feel should be done about this, is, well, I have a policy. Go review my policy. And we need to start actually hearing the action items of this is what actually needs to happen. Is go look at my website, or I've been doing the work. When you hear that type of candor, you should be concerned.
No, I mean, if we want to talk about doing the work has been we've literally been doing the work for years. When I first incorporated Don't Shoot Portland as a nonprofit, Maria Garcia, who is my friend that worked at the Mexican consulate, I asked her to be the president of the organization intentionally so that we could bring Black and Brown communities together, because I knew that her community was going to be suffering, and Donald Trump wasn't even running for office at the time.
Absolutely.
But we knew where we were going as a country because we have experienced the discrepancies in what we call the American dreams. We've dealt with the dehumanization, we've dealt with the discrimination. And so I wanted to make sure that we all had a fair example of what it meant for us to resist and to be able to do something in regards to fighting back.
Absolutely. And I'm going to go ahead and just dive in. I'm going to read just all of the questions that have been asked to the current candidates that really shouldn't be candidates, but we're going to go ahead and ask these questions so that our real candidate can answer them for you all. So progressivism in Portland is a myth and remains the largest white city, white only, and 8% Black. Can you explain the focal point of the Black Lives Matter movement and what it means to us? Now, before Teressa answers this question, you should ask yourself, how can a white candidate answer this question? How can they answer on behalf of the Black community? Go ahead, Teressa.
I can't even answer on behalf of the Black community because we're not monolithic people.
Thank
The
you.
fact that we are such an undermined demographics, so much dehumanization has happened that we're just a practical asset to a campaign strategy or political referendums with no action items, no actual work. It's just, it's incredulous. You know, like right now we know better. Right now we know better. And when you say that they shouldn't have even asked that question, come on, the reference that, oh, I have a Black campaign manager who's a Black Lives Matter activist. Where's the evidence? The answers of, oh, it's in my policy. Why can't you speak to your policy when you're being questioned about the policy? Anyone can refer to a document on a page. And if I'm a policy wonker, my job is to throw generic documents together to make it seem as if it's impressive. That's going to be easy for me. Actual work matters though.
Absolutely.
Doing the actual work, engaging with the actual people, developing actual dynamics for strategies to change, to incorporate and to be inclusive when you're doing that work. That matters.
Exactly. And then that's the other key. We have to think about when a person is producing the work, is that really their work? Or has it come by way of a intern or someone who's tired but really wants to get that recognition? And it's not, it shouldn't be that way, right? So when we talk about these type of questions, the next one said to the debate candidates.
Well, I've heard people say I should volunteer. So it's like, okay, again, I'm going to put the burden on the same people that are dealing with the oppression.
No. The intellectual property of someone else should not be your means of being able to push your political agenda. You should be able to use your own thoughts, your own ethics to be able to push for change. Your ethics should not be based on someone else's platform. Let's just repeat that one more time. Look at the candidates and look at their platforms. Look at where their platforms are coming from. Your ideas should be your own ideas. We are raised within our education system to understand what plagiarism looks like. Let's go ahead and talk about education and why we are told that we should have our own work. Think on that, everyone. Think on that while we go on to the next question, because there's a reason why we're coming at you with the answers to the debate questions after the debate. How do we address racial inequities in the carceral system? And what would you do to address the system at the root? And you kind of already touched on this in terms of those who have slaps on the wrist for cannabis but are not being released. So, you know, let's go ahead and
let's stop creating the second class citizenship programs in our communities. When we look at communities, we have this big giant element of community policing literally directed at BIPOC communities. Outside of all the other standards of resources, you have this other resource that is for them because they matter too. That has to be done away with, because the fact that you would factor in the need to create and address my issues in a whole totally different dynamic with policing attached to it in order to make any concern a real element of a practical investment, that's foul.
Exactly.
That's foul. You know what I'm saying? And that's literally where we are right now. Anytime you have something, we have a conversation about diversity, all they have to do, and excuse my French, is pick a nigga. I'm going to pick somebody black to tell us about this and that. Why not actually do the real work?
Exactly.
Why not actually do the real work? Why not actually do the real research? Why not actually work with black people? You don't ask them to volunteer for this role or that role. If we really want to make an integrated society, where we do literally in Oregon still live in a very segregated society, if we really do want to create an integrated society, managers, supervisors, developers, people creating the assets for social change in our public bureaus need to represent those communities at risk. And they don't need to make you feel comfortable in order to do their work. They don't have to fit into the dynamics of you saying that you went through a program and this is the appropriate person. They have to be qualified.
Absolutely. And
We have
also
qualified people
accessible.
sitting on the sidelines so that people that make you feel comfortable can do the work, but they're not qualified to do it.
Exactly. And also having more disabled leaders. I mean, if we're going to say that we're inclusive, we should have all languages, we should have all abilities.
Those boards, those commissions, those directives should be coming from those communities that have been harmed because of the existing policies. We should not have people creating policy that have benefited from the mandates that are in place right now, because guess what? They're not going to sever those issues. They're
Right.
going to make it less complicated for themselves, and they're going to make it legal.
Right.
When we talk about reform, that's literally making it legal. That's why I'm
Exactly.
always resistant to saying reform, and I say let's dismantle or let's abolish, because if it's not in the way that it benefits us now, you can't rework it to do that,
Right.
because it was never intent to do that.
Exactly. Exactly. And the thing is, for those who don't understand what's happening right now, what's happening right now is we have cyclic systems that are taking place. When a person is released from the carceral system, they don't get released from the carceral system.
Mm-mm.
They are still a part of that system. They are being
Beholden to it.
put into a cycle. They can't get employment the way that they would want to. They can't access education the way that they would want to. Their lives do not go back to normal. Their family does not treat them the same. They go through mental health programming that is set up to make money off of their mental illness.
Everything is set up to investigate and to interrogate and to identify them in the system. There is nothing that is set up to actually perform on their behalf.
Exactly.
You get people that have done 27 years in jail and state prison that come home to a community that's not only gentrified, but your parents are dead. Your community is displaced. There's mandates on your body and where you can provide, where you can be and how you behave with other people. And you have a list of things you're supposed to do.
Right.
But we're in a city that manages to have all these things in place, but does not manage to be a resource to help accommodate.
Exactly. We have clinicians that are concerned more about if they should give a client A, B, or C ORS standing for their billing purposes of mental health versus what's really going to heal the mental health of someone that has exited a carceral system. So to all the behavioral health organizations, know that you're on the list as well of needing to be not reformed, but dismantled and rebuilt.
There's a whole generation that needs to go. Anybody that participated in that 1980 crime bill money, where their whole provision of opportunity was to incarcerate, not educate, not provide jobs, but to incarcerate and to investigate and to interrogate. They cannot now reform the system. They cannot now be the leaders that define what our civil liberties are, because they've already violated our civil rights.
Right.
And it's on the record. We don't have to watch the 13th Amendment to know that we've been harmed. That data is everywhere. When COVID happened and we talked about the inequities in this country, and especially in our prison system and in all of our systems that deal with economic disenfranchisement, we said it is systemic error.
Right.
Not the error of the people living under the system, but the systemic error that creates those inequities. We don't remove those inequities when people are released.
Absolutely not. And that is one of the concerns that you all should have as voters. You should be informed voters to know what's going on with, especially if you are a voter that has to manage people who come out of carceral systems. If you are a supervisor at locations where they might work at, you need to understand the systemic oppression that they've gone through before they step foot into that employer. You need to understand what they're up against, how important that job means to them before you are so quick to attack their skills, their mentalities. Like there's a lot that goes into this. And when you are voting for a mayoral candidate, that candidate should care about those things and not just say they care. They should show you that they care through their action.
Especially if they're in Multnomah County, where we overrepresent those communities.
Absolutely.
We overrepresent them on a level that makes the national standards
Absolutely.
look good. Okay.
Right. And then let's just go ahead and just talk about it real quick, because I know that that was an ongoing theme within a previous debate, was homeless and houselessness. And so let's just go ahead and put it out there that we have become the pinnacle city of homeless and houselessness, where people can go and pitch a tent on the sidewalk and live there, and they will have a whole setup that gives them comfort at night to know that they have a place to rest their heads, despite the fact that we have all of this funding that should be allocated towards programming. So, in terms of the housing situation and people being priced out, I guess some of the questions that were asked to the previous debate candidates was, would we stop the homeless sweeping by voting for you? Would we be able to look at how housing is being priced out? And would you be willing to support pulling out of the joint office of homeless services?
We would never sweep anybody if I was the mayor. I've stood up against sweeps for the last 10 years. My cousin Alicia died when she was houseless in 2015, because she couldn't keep her job because she was unhoused at the time. Um, it's very disrespectful I grew up in foster care. So when you turn 18 years old, you don't have anywhere to go. They don't have systems set up to go ahead and incorporate the fact that you've been displaced from your family and that they have been considered a risk factor for your safety. Reevaluating that in your own mind so that you can find people where you're safe, so that you can actually turn into an adult. That's all harmful. That's all hard. So you take the politics of how you've been treated in that system, and then all of a sudden you're unhoused in society. There is nobody. If you've been the ward of the court, if you've grown up in Section 8 and you've been a ward of the court, or your family's been under the court, you're always looking for the political system. You're always looking for an authority to be the guide to help you through that economic issue or that issue that you're going through. The fact that we don't have those systems set up in a way that they respond in a compassionate way, that the response is premeditated, that we know that people are going to be unhoused when they come out of the system, that we know that people are going to be unhoused if they're not making money. The fact that we're not building the accommodation for people, we know that everybody is dealing with the mental health trauma.
Right.
The fact that we who are concerned because we're politicians or we're business owners or we're taxpayers, the fact that we have not created the concern,
Right.
the model for the safety net. Right now, one of the things that I've stood for is preservation of housing. Because when I grew up in foster care and I knew somebody with a big house, that meant that we all had room to thrive in. We had basements, we had backyards, we had upstairs, we had friends. There were different levels of people in the homes that could help with taking care of kids or however you had to deal with it. But I've always looked at homes or houses or big old spaces where there could be more people
Right.
as a way to accommodate the issues that we were dealing with or to offset those issues.
Right.
The fact that right now we're just trying to figure out how to like keep the camp sustained. Talking about sending, children, young teenage moms to sit in the camps. No,
No.
we have to function in a different way. We should be more considerate of that. You can't tell them that we're going to give you a safe space to stay outside with your child.
Right.
The mental terror in having that as the only option is enough. That's a lot.
Right.
If that's all we can count on, and what we call Portland's most progressive city,
Right.
why aren't we rehabilitating these buildings? Why aren't we putting people into all these empty apartments that I see up and down the streets that say for lease on them? Why wouldn't the city spend CARE Act money when we had COVID to immediately house people so that we could offset the safety and health issues that we were going to have to deal with and be concerned with? Why didn't we invest in paying some of these landlords so that the people that couldn't afford to pay their rent would not have that burden come January.
Right.
You know, we don't premeditate the need for caring for people.
Right.
Because we're too busy trying to build capital.
Exactly. And then because we're trying to build capital and we're not looking at people who are being priced out of their
money
housing,
for those people.
they're getting money,
you get
for,
money
those people.
for those people.
Yep.
I got this many unhoused people. Give me this money.
Exactly.
I'll get them walkers. Give me money.
Exactly.
You know, the inequities exist because there are funding opportunities.
And I'll say one thing for
that's
sure.
Why we demand audits.
This past weekend, and that's why audits are so important, and we're grateful that you do the audits. I had the pleasure of flying into Oakland. I was actually born in Oakland, California, and I was raised here in Portland, Oregon. So I have ties to both communities. And one thing I saw is that they didn't do sweeps like there used to be a location that's called Tent City. It still somewhat exists, but not a lot. But it definitely has decreased over time. And so one of the things is there's this, it's called the Joint Office of Homeless Services. A lot of people think that needs to be disbanded. A lot of people feel as if like that's something that we shouldn't be a part of anymore because they haven't been doing their job. But as
I think we need oversight in everything that we say we're going to do, because what I learned in the 2016 election, a lot of the things that we were motivated as activists because of the Mike Brown uprising and because of all the years that we persistently protested after that, a lot of the organizations and agencies that showed up on the front lines with us, they benefited from the people that we all helped get elected. And when they got the seat at the table, when they got to be in those committees, when they had the leverage of these elected officials, they left all of us out. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like even in the housing agencies, the same organizations that we stood on the front line for, they were picked and chosen to sit and to facilitate the practice of the community engagement.
Right.
And so the effects and the outcomes and everything that we struggle from never became a reality.
Right.
And so again, we can't continue to disenfranchise communities because we're going to find people that care enough to do the work for them. We have to invest in the education model that builds that capacity within them. We have to create that bandwidth so that people have sustainable efforts because they have sustainable resources in their community.
Exactly. And a lot of
including our unhoused community, because that community knows what best practices are necessary. And there are leaders in those communities that are not looked at as leaders in our city, but they are leaders in our city because they serve members of communities in our city.
Exactly. And then a lot of those who sit on boards that are intimidated to speak up on behalf of the disenfranchised communities, now is the time. It's not the time to be silent right now. It is definitely the time to sway votes and convince others that they should be making the right decisions as they're filling out their ballots and getting ready to select who they feel should be the next leader. Don't just select a leader just because their name is printed on the ballot. I mean, come on, you guys.
That battle already. That's why we have the write-in option.
Yeah, we have the write-in option for a reason. To anyone who has been concerned, oh, will this work? It most definitely can work. And for everyone who was concerned about percentages, we are very close in this race. Very close. And we had an article that was released that said that a lot of white women were concerned about who they should vote for. If you are a mother or a sister or a daughter, and you know what it feels like to always have to advocate for yourself as a woman or whatever you identify as, know that it would be beautiful, right? To elect a woman to be able to represent your needs. We are still making 60 cents less than $1 to males. We are in a fight right now for economic equity. We're in a fight right now. And so we do know that if, well, we won't say if, we'll say when elected, Teressa would also be considered right now, the way it's set up, police commissioner. And so people want to know the decision, would you be the police commissioner? And if not, what would you do in terms of who should be in that pathway? If we're talking about abolition, if we're talking about what that would look like, we're not going to give you the answer, Sarah or Ted, but we're going to let you know what it might look like.
I mean, well, they're not capable to do the work that I'm capable of doing, and I'm not capable to do the work that they're capable of doing. But what I have measured in the 50 years that I've been alive is that I'm a diplomatic person. I don't always say what I want is what everybody else should want, or how I feel is how everybody else should feel. I'm not that person. Not even when I saw that our organization or the write-in campaign or Next Up or anybody was endorsing other candidates, I don't have to like those people for me to be okay with that. I don't interfere in all of that because I have ways that I do things. In regards to the police commissioner, I mean, I live for the day where kids say, "What is a police officer? What do you mean by that?" Like they think that it's absurd that someone would walk around with a gun to provide public safety. I want to live and see that actually happen. And getting there is actually what we have to do. We can't say that we're not intentional on doing that. We have to go in and say, look, y'all know I'm trying to get you into a different position. I'm trying to change your industry. You're not going to be here at the end of the 3 terms that I have planned. Like we have to not complicate that with, with being honest. I'm going to be honest about it. I want full abolition of the police. I believe that they are a sector of white supremacy because they are tied in hand with slavery. I still have the bill of lading from my family when we were brought over here on these ships. I know that my great great grandparents bought the plantation that they survived on, and they had to live on that plantation and educated their children and built businesses. I know that Medgar Evers was out getting people registered to vote while he had an NAACP office that was owned by my family at the time of his murder. You know what I'm saying? So I know what we've had to go through in the last 50 years to even get the right to register to vote, much less to run for office.
Right.
So I'm not going to lie to people and say that I won't do something. I have to be intentional and say this is absolutely what I will do. And what your support will make more humane actions happen through this position.
Absolutely.
My plan is to abolish the police. How do we get there? How do we, as a society, allow that to be a fair preference in our minds?
Right.
We build the strategy and we do the dismantling that's necessary. And how do we know that it can happen? Because we absolutely can have a leader that actually cares about us.
Right. And maybe some of the police officers might be concerned, like, hey, I'm gonna be out of a job. Well, guess what?
There's other industries.
There's other industries,
There's other industries.
and there's other opportunities to protect and serve. And we know you've done the best you can with what you have, but you have way too much power.
We need more people with doing mutual aid. There's some people that need some boxes carried to their homes.
Yes, yes. There's a lot
some
more.
gutters, clean some gutters and stuff like that.
There's a lot more to do.
Change the lights on some of these streets where we can't see.
I mean, you think about a job that you never thought you would do, and you can do that
You still be
job.
in the public sector. We need you.
I mean, come on now. You could start like basketball programs.
No,
I mean,
we don't want them playing with kids.
you want to you want to be
No,
somewhere.
They've already been harmed.
They've tried though. That's the thing that's insane.
I know, but
They've
that's the
tried.
problem that I have is that my nephew grew up in SEI. He grew up in the Portland Activities League. He grew up in the Boys and Girls Club, and he was still murdered.
Yep.
And there's children that are being harmed because of those relationships, because they're being undermined in their humanity.
Yeah.
They're being taught that they're second-class citizens
Right.
because we're going to have a cop play with you because you're not safe. That's what a child is thinking when their safety is undermined by having to walk and play with a law enforcement officer.
Right.
On television, you see good guys, bad guys when they portray these roles on television, and then you have the children playing with them.
Yeah.
Come
Instead
on,
of really going
you're
after
literally teaching
people.
them that they should not interpret what they understand as a reality, and so that's creating chaos. And then they wonder why we have all these statistics in health, disenfranchisement, our mental health capacity, all that. We're traumatized because we're always trying to defend ourselves because everything is a lie.
Right. Oh, speaking of defend ourselves, so let me put on my I call it WYT thinking hat. For those who don't understand what that would look like for safety, and they're thinking, oh, I'm in my home and someone has broken into my home. Who am I going to call if you abolish the police? Oh, my cat is stuck in a tree. Who am I going to call if you abolish the police? Oh, someone's trying to intrude and I'm trying to get into my vehicle and they're harming me. Who am I going to call if there's no police? Like those type of.
Yeah. I mean, the thought is this. When we kill somebody for stealing food, why didn't we just feed them? why was the challenge of the person who pulled the trigger to protect the property that might have cost a few dollars, rather than to say that that's a social concern situation, and I see people coming in here stealing all the time, I need to make sure that there's some food, because I absolutely know which items they steal more of. I absolutely know which aisles that product is on, and maybe if I provide it, because I'm gonna mark some of it out of stock earlier, I could save the cost of the surveillance and the investigation. I might even be able to talk to these people and say, hey, is there something going on? Well, every night I got some extra stuff that I can make sure, we have to start showing social concern
Exactly.
rather than economic priorities.
The
Because
diapers aren't stolen because
my grandmother owned a
just because.
restaurant on Martin Luther King. It used to be Union. She fed so many people. I watched that my entire life. She fed people. She did not judge them. I remember her cleaning out the bottles and stuff and having them ready for people that needed them. She did not judge them. If people came to her and they wanted something and it was somebody that already been chewed off of everybody else's property, she'd give them something to do so that not only would she be able to help them, but they could be dignified in the response.
Exactly.
Like, I'm going to have you go over here and move this out of the way and I'll give you a couple of dollars. But you would find something to show social concern. You don't make people feel more inadequate when they're already going through something. And the fact that we still live in a society that looks to people as, oh, this person looks this way, so I would prefer to go to them for help rather than this person over here that looks fearful. Those are social and economic priorities that have been programmed. We've been trained. When we talk about people learning racism and discrimination, we learn those things. It is time to intentionally unlearn those things. We have to create what new priorities could look like in our lives every day.
Exactly.
Running for mayor is not just about saying, I want to elect someone that is a Black woman. We need a Black woman to tell us what to do. We need a Black woman to tell us what to do. We need to listen to Black women, because guess what? We have not listened to them, but we will say over and over again, we should be listening to them. We should be taking direction from them. We should be working and working in alignment with the most vulnerable. If you can keep saying that and still not listen, then that is a contradiction, and we're tired of it. We're not going back.
Right. And it's too little to think that doing something such as believing in a better tomorrow is something so far to grasp.
We're on our way there.
We're almost there. And so just to go ahead and wrap it up, a lot of people on Twitter wanted to really know about social engagement and how that translates into real life interactions with the people who disagree with you, because we know that everyone has their opinions, right? But at the end of the day, we know what social engagement looks like from you. So,
I mean, in my opinion, I've literally been doing whatever I can to look out for Portlanders, period. And I have never had time to denounce or devalue anyone's efforts, anyone else's efforts, anyone else's perspective or insights. And the fact that we have people that is their actual strategy for running this race or for supporting a candidate, I'm not getting into that. I've looked at this stuff online, and I've seen people trying to drag me. Why don't you just get out the way for her? Why don't you do this? Why are you doing this, Sarah? And I'm like, are you serious? I'm literally doing community service. I'm literally doing my job, my work all day, every single day. And there are community members that are concerned. And rather than listening to the concerns of the people, you want to bash me? Why not listen to the concerns? Because guess what? When I hear things happen, just like when I was at home and I heard about the George Floyd uprising, just like when I was at home and I knew that COVID-19 needed to be responded to by people that had platforms, guess what? I just did what I needed to do to help people.
Absolutely.
I didn't concern myself with what other people weren't doing or what they was trying to do. I mean, it got to the point where I saw a troll that said that I was in alignment with Republicans because I had the Secretary of State, which is a nonpartisan position, audit our education system. You know, they said that I was, like anti or I wanted more police on the buses, and that was out of line because Sarah was more progressive. But I have a friend who got attacked by Jeremy Christian on the bus. I know kids that watched in trauma and horror as this person killed two people. The police did not stop him. And so when I say things like that, it's literally my perspective. Like, I know the police probably won't ever save anybody's life on the bus. But to be petty as I can be, and sometimes I just have to be so that I can just let the joke be on them. I'll say something like, "Yeah, why don't y'all do something about what's happening on the bus when white supremacists kill people, or when they try to attack black children, or let's do something about the white supremacists that ran down Larnell Bruce." And wait, the police chased down Larnell while he was laying on the ground dying, and referred to him at the trial as a suspect, even though he was a victim, and the actual suspects rode right past them. And let's say that they didn't even tell the district attorney that the guy was a European kindred. We did. You know what I'm saying? So when I'm talking about public safety and I'm talking about the concerns that I have, it's because of the intentionality and the lack of intention I've seen and witnessed as I've advocated for people in our community. And I don't hear any of those other people that say those things show up for any of these families.
Not
You
at
know what I'm
all.
saying? Or even have anything to say. The max murders literally just happened 3 years ago. Demetria and the families just sentenced Jeremy to 3 life-term sentences, and I haven't heard anybody say anything about white supremacy
Exactly.
or what they're gonna do about it, except for that they're gonna go and show up for Joey. Joey's a buster.
And it's interesting because if you don't hear your potential candidates speaking on these matters, there's a problem. And
Y'all think we're the problem?
you should be concerned about leaders who are not paying attention to the increase of homicides, the lack of healthcare access, the education system failing, the certain carceral systems that are not working properly. We should just keep looking at what the problems are and wonder to ourselves, is the person that's going for that position capable of being able to fill the needs of the community? If the answer is no, then you already know who to vote for. Teresa Rayford. The answers have been given to you, and if you have additional questions, feel free to reach out to the campaign and ask your questions. But don't allow the biases of others on social media to influence your decision making. If you want to get to know someone, then you go after the information yourself. My grandmother always used to say to me, as it relates to my religious walk with God, get to know the power above for yourself. Nobody else can take you to that knowledge. Same thing goes with politics. Get to know the candidate for yourself. And this was your opportunity as we had our conversation with our mayoral writing candidate, Teresa Rayford. That is spelled TERESSA space RAFORD.
I'm like,
And
yeah,
to everyone watching, we will have ASL added onto this video. And we thank Fingers Crossed Interpreting for always supporting this campaign. And just to leave you with a quote and to rest to be able to say a closing statement, this came from an Instagram message that was from at ALLEGRA. Let's see, that's ALLEGRRAD. So shout out to you for this post, but it said, white supremacy won't die until white people see it as a white issue they need to solve rather than a black issue they need to empathize with. Sit on that, and we'll have our closing statement from Teresa Rayford.
Yes. Thank you, Arya. Thank you, everybody,
Yes.
tuning in. Shit, I'm wearing my mask. I'm thankful. I'm honored that everybody is doing this work. I'm going to be mailing in my ballot today. Well, I think I'm gonna just go drop it off at the ballot box on my way to go out and see Silent Voices at Oaks Park, so I can support Donna Hayes and Quanis. And I just wanted to say that I'm doing this for people like myself who have lost loved ones in this city and have not had a response that is adequate to address those issues. I'm doing this for people in our community that have had me advocate for them in our housing issues, and watch communities be built because they're taking pictures with these people and see those people on the committees and not address or go back into those communities to engage with those same people that gave them a level of political access that they needed. I'm doing this for the grandmas and the grandparents that sit up in the senior center every week, or used to, that would sit up there and watch the programs that they created when they were kids and introduced into the city that were utilized to create the foundation of our arts programming just to be left out and to see their own children left out of that process. I'm doing this for generations of people that have carried generations of people on their backs. We're done. We're done. We're not going back. We don't have anything to lose but our chains, and that is the truth. I hope that everybody that's registered to vote does use their right to vote, and I hope they vote with their conscience. Research, do what you need to do, contact people, reach out to me directly. I don't have a problem answering questions unless I know I'm going to be on live with Arya, and then I'll make you wait until I get to say it in live. But please just do what's necessary to make social change happen, because right now we're at the space where we are shifting the paradigm, and it has to happen. Thank you, and everybody be cool. Everybody be cool. Yeah,